All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Get Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Brennan Wiersma. Super excited for this podcast today. I have Joshua Slater here with me, financial coach and was it certified personal accountant? Is that
Certified public accountant.
public accountant? That's right. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I got that confused. How's it going today, man?
Man, it's good. It's Tuesday, which means it's the second best day of the week.
It sounds good to me. Just another day to get after it and learn about some finance, how to get wealthy. So, how long have you been an accountant?
Well, I got my CPA designation 2 years ago. I've been working as a tax accountant ever since. So I guess officially for 2 years.
Okay. What motivated you to get into that sort of a career? Have you always been interested in money, or was it something you picked up later in life?
The long story is when I was a kid, my father always worked for different companies, and he tended to always lose his job. He lost his job a lot, which put some burden on us and our family to help out. And when I was 18, my father lost his job again, and it caused me to pick up several jobs to help pay the mortgage and support the family. And so I vowed I'd never want that to happen to my family. And so I picked the safest career route one can do, and that's taxes, because you'll always have taxes no matter what. So it'll never die. So that's why I ended up where I'm at.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a good thing to know about. I know if there's a topic where I get a little bit nervous or a little bit questionable on how things go, it's taxes. So having that
You and me
skill
both.
set. Yeah. So how is that process? Is it? I imagine it's quite a bit of studying and research to get to a point where you feel pretty competent with how that side of things works, more than the next person who would go to you for help.
Yeah, so vocationally, it depends on your state, but so I'm in Utah, Salt Lake City, and you have to have a master's degree in order to become a CPA. So you have to get a master's degree, which ends up being 5 to 6 years of school, and then on top of that, you've got four tests that you have to take, and each of them average 150 to 200 hours of study to take them. And so it's a lot of study, a lot of research. And then when you're done with it, you don't feel like you still learned anything. And then it's all just on the job learning, and
Yeah.
it changes every day. Tax laws are being changed daily, believe it or not. And so you just got to keep up on it and make sure you're adaptable to everything that's going on. So it's a ever shifting and moving career, but you learn a lot through it.
Yeah, sounds like it's kind of a license to learn once you kind of get your foot in the door. So do you work for like a bank or a firm, or how does that
Yeah,
go?
so I work for an accounting firm. So they call it the Big Four. So I work for one of them, and I do taxes for them. But on the flip side is the financial coaching, which you had kind of mentioned, and I do that independently. Uh, the, I can't do that through my firm. I'm very
Right.
independent there. So yeah.
Yeah, because I guess for the people watching, I found you on social media through my um, Instagram networking that I try to do to kind of make these connections. And you have quite a bit of, I mean, on the Instagram page, there's quite a bit of financial coaching itself, just as far as tips and little tricks like that. When did you start getting social media involved with that? Did social media come first and then you kind of branded it as a financial coaching platform?
So that's a great question. So about 8 years ago, believe it or not, well, I mean, I told you about the experience when I was 18, and ever since then, I've had a knack for wanting to help people with their finances. And it started with my family and friends, and eh, over the years, I've developed a system for budgeting and helping people get out of debt and prepare for retirement. So I've been doing that realistically for the last 11 years. And then just recently I decided, hey, what am I doing? I need to branch out and help more people. So I actually started the Instagram back in July. So it's very recent. And ever since then, it's grown, and I've been able to help people all over the country, in the United States and in Canada, prepare for retirement and get out of debt. So it's been a really, really fulfilling opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. What does coaching look like? Is it a weekly basis? You're keeping in touch with people on how they're getting their finances in order, or is it more of a, monthly? What does that look like?
It depends on the individual and it depends on what their needs are. So some people meet as often as weekly or biweekly, and then some I've met with quarterly or twice a year. And so it depends on where they're at. So the people that need more accountability with their work, or they have a lot more questions, it's more often.
Yeah, I like that. Sounds like something I could use, honestly. Okay, so I guess kind of getting into some of that content that we can provide to people watching this. At what age? Because from what I've seen, is you kind of lean towards retirement and paying off debt. That was a common theme I was seeing. So, as far as retirement goes, at what age do you recommend people to start investing or opening accounts? Where do you begin with starting the retirement saving process?
Yeah, great question. Realistically, 18.
Okay.
That's when you're allowed to open up a Roth IRA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when you're able to start doing that process. So that early, I would definitely suggest people start as soon as possible. There's compounding interest and there's a long-term financial gain. So the earlier you start, the less you have to worry about as you get older.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, and just for people that maybe um, don't have a good understanding of different retirement accounts. I remember when I found out about the Roth IRA, it was kind of like, wait, this is a real thing? You can just put money in, and then when you're 59, you have $1 million. Like, explain a little bit about what a Roth IRA is for people that are wondering.
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit and just talk about what a retirement account is.
Okay, perfect.
So a retirement account is basically signified by the government, the IRS, as a retirement account. So mainly you've got things like a 401k, IRA. There's other things called like a SEP IRA, and there's all sorts of different types of retirement accounts.
Hmm.
But the point is it's encouraging individuals to prepare for retirement, and you can't take out the money until you're hit a certain age.
Right.
Otherwise, there's penalties and taxes associated with that. So that's kind of what a retirement account specifically is.
Cool.
Now, a Roth IRA is different than other accounts because it goes in after taxes have been paid. So you've already paid the taxes on it. It goes into your retirement account, which means all of your growth is tax-free. So at the end, when you're retiring, you pull your money out of your Roth IRA and it's all tax-free because you paid taxes going in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the flip side is there's a traditional IRA, which is tax-free going in, means you get a tax deduction going in, but then all of your growth and everything you pull out at the end is taxable.
Yeah. Which the Roth IRA seems like the better of the two. That's correct, right?
I mean, it just depends.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally for me, I'd like to see my taxable income go up and higher. I'm expecting to pay more taxes in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And so a Roth IRA is good for me. However, if I want to live off of my retirement account, I'd probably rather pay taxes then because my income's less. So it just depends on the individual,
Okay.
realistically.
Yeah, that makes
Both are good.
sense. Right. And then as far as limitations, like what is it? I know it's yearly. You can put in a certain amount. How does that work based on the person? When can you open a Roth IRA? Is there any time you wouldn't be able to, just in case someone is looking to after watching this?
Yeah, so Roth IRAs are the most limited because of the tax advantage of tax-free growth.
Mm.
So realistically, individuals can open it up at 18, and people that have annual taxable income, if you're married, it's like 250,000. And so if you make more than 250,000, you can't open up these accounts because there's other avenues for you, and the IRS seems like you're okay without it. And so it's kind of limited to certain demographics. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. When I started really looking into preparing financially for the future, that's one of the first things that I've been recommended or have heard about was the Roth IRA, because I think there's that low entry, and it really is so effective with how much it can build. As far as if you start putting in when you're 18, by the time you get to a point where you need to take it out, it's like exponentially, it's compounding. So,
Right. Well, and to your point, I didn't answer one of the questions you asked me was annually there's limitations as well on how much you can put in.
oh yeah,
So this year it's $6,000. So you're limited at six, and that changes every 2 years realistically.
mm-hmm.
So this year it's a $6,000 limit. So there's not a lot, but it's something.
That goes up typically over the 2 years. Is that true? Or
Yeah. So last year it was 5,500.
mm-hmm.
The year before that it was 5,500, and then the year before that it was like five. So it typically does go up.
Nice. Awesome. As far as retirement itself go, do you feel like people get trapped in this thought process of 60 years old, or you have to do this to retire? Are there any common misconceptions that people might have about retirement, or things that you might, as a financial coach, advise people to go a different way? Or what's your kind of a perspective on it? Is 60 the retirement age? Where do you see that?
When you asked me that question on this sheet that I got, it was real. I actually started laughing because I think people think retirement is an age. People think retirement is when you can start taking out Social Security.
Yeah.
And in reality, that's not true. You can retire as soon as you're ready. It's a number of preparedness and money and wealth that you have, not an age. Even if you hit that certain age group and you don't have enough for retirement, you can't retire. So I think that people think that they retire at 69, 65, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
when in reality, it's a number in your account. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. And for probably the majority of people, they get a job and, they have a 401k and they get a retirement plan, and it kind of just, it comes out of their paycheck and they forget about it. And it just sets them on track for that, when you reach that, whatever age that is. But if you actually put in some effort to yourself and do some investing, it can shorten that number quite a bit. How would you recommend people start to reduce that age? Or is there a route that you would recommend, whether it's investing in real estate or in stocks? What's a good plan for someone who's looking to retire a little earlier?
Yeah, great question. That's the trick, right? I mean, everybody wants to retire sooner and work less in life. And I feel like everybody I talk to, especially millennials, it's always, I want to retire. I want to make money without having to work. They see people with Instagram accounts or blogs and they feel like they make a lot of money but don't do anything. So what it comes down to, Brennan, is it comes to hard work, saving mentality, and a goal. So the earlier you start that, the earlier it's going to happen. So as you make sacrifices here and there, and as you work toward that goal, the harder you work at it, the sooner it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're someone who's just going to sit there and say, I'm just going to hit my employer match, I'm going to do my 6% to get my match, and then do that for the next 40 years, and then I'll retire when I'm done. You'll be able to retire, maybe, but would you rather retire at 40? Mm-hmm. I mean, for me personally, I would. And so what does that look like for me? Well, for me, that looks at 15 to 20 to 25% of my income is going to go into retirement. Mm-hmm. And then also it means in retirement, I have a good, base. I've got some good money, and then I can live well in there. But I think it's also a mindset change. People think that, I can do it, and then when I retire, I can spend all sorts of money. But realistically, your expenses are going to go up when you get older anyway, mm-hmm. because you've got medical expenses. The older you get, the more money you spend on medical expenses. And so as you spend more on medical expenses, that leaves less money for other areas of your life. And so I think you have to develop a mindset change, prepare early, and be comfortable the way you live, and not live outside of your means, and not live super extravagant lives and in presidential suites the rest of your life.
Yeah, I really like that, because people get this idea of retirement, like you were saying, and that's kind of just when they're done working. But as far as the lifestyle you want to live, that can change quite a bit based off of the retirement that you have or the amount you've saved. Um, how much how much would you say that the amount you have invested, how does that translate towards the like your yearly income that you want to live off of, right? And how that number changes that you can retire based on the lifestyle you want to have. And I guess maybe, I don't know if you have specific numbers, but I guess like a ballpark idea of how much someone invests can live off of versus someone who wants to live off of like $30,000 in retirement.
Yeah, those are a lot of really good questions, and those are things that you have to run through a calculator on.
Yeah.
Those are some kind of intense formulas. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want, I can go through and give you an example. I've got a calculator pulled up on my computer, and we can go through and kind of do that if you want. So, I mean, if you want to give me some numbers, we're more than welcome to run through it.
Yeah. Are you comfortable doing that? I don't want to put you on the spot or anything.
Oh, no, that's okay. So I went ahead and started one, actually. You had kind of asked earlier in one of your questions, so maybe I'm jumping the gun on this question, but
No,
one of your
you're good.
questions was how much would someone need to invest if they wanted to retire in 10 years, for example?
Yep. That's kind of where I was going to.
So there's two parts to this equation, right? So the first part to your equation is, what am I going to live off of in retirement, and how long is my retirement? So let's say you're 29 years old and you expect to die when you're 80. So you need 41 years. So you're 29, you want to retire in 10 years, makes you 39 when you want to retire.
Hmm.
If you expect to die when you're 80, that means you need 41 years of retirement savings, and you need to accumulate that in a 10-year period. So what does that look like? So in order to retire, you need to have $1.5 million. And that's assuming a 7.5% annual rate of return in whatever you're invested in. So as you know, if you're Brandon, I'm sure you're familiar with the stock market averages, and that's a semi-conservative, maybe a little aggressive percentage, but it's realistic.
Yeah, it comes from like over 100-year period, right?
I think it's like 10% right now over a 100-year period without inflation, and it's like almost 8 if including inflation.
So 7's pretty good then for this.
Yeah, so 7.5. So you need about $1.5 million. Well, what do you have to do in those 10 years in order to have $1.5 million? So in order to have saved up 1.5 in 10 years at 7.5% return, so kind of the same average, you need to be saving almost $9,000 a month in order to have $1.5 million at the end of 10 years. So obviously that's a big number, because we're accumulating a whole lot of money in such a short period of time. Mm-hmm. But let's say you wanted to change that then and say, okay, maybe 10 years isn't realistic. Maybe I'm 29. Maybe let's shoot for 59. So instead of making it in a 10-year period, let's look at it in a 30-year period. Mm. So if you run that same number in 30 years, if you save $1,200 a month for 30 years and you get that 7.5%, you're going to have $1.5 million in retirement. Well, now we know that we're not going to be retired for those 41 years. Instead, you're going to be retired for 21 years. Obviously, this is still considering you're going to die at 80.
Right. Okay.
So realistically, 1.2 million is all you need. And so if 1.2 is all you need, so you need $1,200 a month in savings in order to hit your retirement goals. So that's realistic. And and the part I didn't tell you is that those are the savings amounts you need in order to have $120,000 a year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's where I was going to, because the lifestyle. So 1.5 would allow you to live off that based on the returns, right? Because you're assuming that it's going to increase continuously 7%, which so you could live off of like 4% or 3%, whatever that 120 would equal, right?
Right.
That's kind of how
Right.
it comes.
Yep.
Right. And that's awesome. I'm so happy you ran those numbers. That's exactly what I was kind of hoping to kind of go through, because people don't really put it in that sort of a box where if you save this amount of money, you know, you can have this much by the time you retire. It's just, all right, this comes out of my, you know, my monthly or my paychecks, and then I don't think about it. And then also, as far as the age you start saving, in theory, you would have to save less money at a younger age, right? Because that interest can just keep compounding, like we were talking about earlier, because your money's sort of making more money at that point. Is that how much does that affect it based off of how much you save when you're younger?
Yeah, so it makes a huge difference, right? Because as your interest grows, it starts to earn money for you. I don't have that pulled up and ready. I could have that, but
No, that's
basically,
fine.
yeah, what it comes down to is the earlier you start, the less you have to save monthly. I saw a graph the other day there. If you started at age 15, if you had saved $250 a month and put it towards retirement accounts, by the time you retire, you'd have $1 million in retirement. And that number obviously increases the older you get. But I think by the time you're in your 30s, it's something like $900, and then when you're in your 50s, it's several $1,000s. And it's just because of that compounding interest. It just as it grows, it continues to keep earning money for you, and it's a powerful thing. And I think the sooner you start, the better. Obviously, people that are going to be listening or watching this are probably not going to be 18 or younger where they can make that decision. They're probably more like you and I, where they're kind of middle-aged or a little older. And so what it comes down to is start. If you haven't started, at least start with something. Find a financial coach, find somebody that can help you, and get a goal, get a plan together, because it's not unrealistic to retire early and retire with $1 million or more so you can live comfortably through retirement. There's
Yeah.
actually there's a book out there that I've read, and I'm actually doing a giveaway right now on my Instagram for it. It's called Everyday Millionaire, and it's basically the statistics show that people that are millionaires are everyday people that live everyday lives. The majority of millionaires out there are self-made millionaires who have just worked hard and diligently and started saving from a young age, and grew wealth on their own through retirement accounts, and they show how it's possible. So it's actually really neat to see that everybody can do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gives me chills thinking about it. It's so exciting to me that there's opportunity out there. It doesn't take some genius or, you know, business CEO, entrepreneur to make him be a millionaire. Really, like you can. I mean, like you were saying, if you invest $250 when you're a teenager, you are going to be a millionaire. There's no way getting around it. I mean, unless the world ends or whatever, and the stock market doesn't do what it's supposed to. But so before we kind of get out of this retirement topic, what are what would you say are your top retirement accounts that people should start investing in, and when should you start investing in those specific ones?
Yeah, so my actually top account that I would suggest is probably not one that what you would hear very often. My top account would actually be an HSA, or a health savings account. It sounds weird, but the reason why I would suggest a health savings account is because it has a triple threat tax advantage. So it goes in tax free, money gets spent tax free, and then the money that's invested within your HSA grows tax free. So everything is tax free. So most retirement accounts have a 2-point tax advantage system, or even one. Like your Roth is 2 points, right? It grows and it comes out tax free, but it goes in taxed.
Mm.
But the HSA is tax free across the board, as long as you're using it for health related expenses. And as we know, as you get older, your medical expenses are just going to go up. So as you start earlier, you can prepare and invest in your medical expenses.
And
So
that process is basically just saving receipts, right? You break your leg and you basically show an invoice. This is how much money I need from my HSA account. Is that kind of how that goes?
I mean, not necessarily saving receipts. I mean, it comes with a debit card. You
Oh,
can
right.
swipe your
Okay.
debit card at the doctor's office, or you can have the doctor directly bill your HSA or your, whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, but it's pretty simple. And you'd be surprised at what you can spend with your HSA. I've got a pair of computer glasses I wear that I bought with my HSA.
Oh,
For girls, feminine products that they need, you can buy on your HSA. That's something you don't think about.
yeah. No, I didn't
So
think about that at all. I mean, assume when you say a health savings account, it's like, oh, if you get some illness down the road, but really, you can buy a pair of glasses with it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there's a wide variety of qualified expenses that you can use for it. And in reality, like I said, you'd be surprised at what you can buy money on tax free. And that sounds so weird. Like me as a tax accountant, I always think taxes, but what's so important about the tax free is when at the end of the day, you owe money to the IRS. You have to pay taxes for using, the government roads or whatever you're going to use. And you've got a tax that you have to pay. And now, whatever we can spend money on that's not taxed is going to be awesome because that increases, basically, that decreases the cost of whatever we're buying.
Hmm.
So if you go buy a packet of Band-Aids that's $10, if you buy it with taxed dollars, you're spending $10. Whereas if you buy it with tax-free dollars, it might actually be like $9.
Hmm.
So it all depends on your tax rate and that. So that's why it's so important. People get caught up on coupon counting, which is awesome, but also this is another area where it's good to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's so cool. When I think of retirement accounts, HSA it should be at the top of the list for most people, but it's probably not, right? I don't know what the
Yeah,
reason is, but
it's an afterthought. Well, and there's qualifications for it too, right? So if you've got a low deductible plan, so you pay more monthly for your insurance and you have low deductible, you don't qualify for an HSA based off of your insurance. So HSAs are only meant for people for high deductible plans or medium deductible plans. So everybody's different. If you don't go to the doctors a lot and you're pretty healthy and you don't really have any issues, I'd suggest always doing a high deductible or middle deductible plan if that's an option. Just because you get the HSA, usually your employer contributes to it, so you get this money that's free, and then you get the option to invest it.
there's usually a
And
match with HSAs.
if your employer offers an HSA, they usually will do a match.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's awesome because then that's tax free and tax free growth as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, employers want to incentivize you to have a high deductible because
Hmm.
they spend less money on your health care.
Oh,
Because if
okay.
I've got a low deductible plan, not only am my premium higher, is my premium higher every month, but theirs is as well. So they have to pay more. So if they can get you into a high deductible plan, then
Whatever way they
then
can, they'll okay.
it's incentivizing. So yeah, and so I mean we kind of beat HSA to a pulp there, but it's a great account. Second to that, I'd probably go with the Roth IRA just because of that tax-free growth
Hmm.
potential. And then you've got all sorts of different things out there like your 401ks. So those are kind of the different accounts that I'd focus on.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for that. There's a lot of good information there. So, how much should someone start saving? Because you mentioned you were talking about 15 to 20%, and that kind of goes based off of what you want to retire off of. Is that how you would calculate how much you should save, or what does that process look? Should everybody save 15 to 20%, or um, how would you go about telling people for that?
Yeah, so I mean, a baseline, what I tell people is 12 to 15 personally. I think 12 to 15 is a good number on a good goal for people to shoot for. 15%, I mean, if you think about 15% of your income, it's significant. But it's also, if you can get it set up automatically before your paycheck comes into your checking account, it's like it never existed. And so you're saving without thinking about it. So realistically, 15% will get you to achieve your goal quickly, and it allows you to retire sooner and more comfortably. So that's why I use 15%. There's lots of other financial people out there and professionals that use a very similar benchmark on kind of what to shoot for retirement.
That largely is affected by your income as well, because 15% of someone who makes 50,000 is a lot less than someone who makes 100,000, or it's half as much. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you've got to think about it like this. Somebody who's going to make $100,000 a year probably is going to have a nicer house or a more expensive house than somebody who makes $30,000 a year. And so they've become accustomed to a way of living on that $100,000 income. And so 15% for them is $15,000 because they've become accustomed to higher expenses. Their mortgage payments are going to be higher. They're going to have more taxes. They're going to have all these other things that affect that. Whereas somebody who's going to make less money is going to probably have less expenses. And so that's why you do it based off of your income. Realistically, if you want to live a $50,000 life while you're making $100,000, then you could save 50% of your income and live a $50,000 lifestyle. And that will just sustain you through retirement forever. And your obviously retirement goals will come a lot faster. But you have to think in the future, in retirement, what is my spending habit going to be like? And that's what you're kind of shooting for. So if you're young, if you don't make as much, say you make $30,000 and you want to live more extravagant in retirement than you do now, you may need to adjust that retirement percentage. So yeah, it's based off of how much you make, but then also what your goal is for retirement.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. It sounds like the lifestyle inflation. So as you make more money, then you're basically can be the percentage is the same as someone who is saving more money but making less. So I guess a way to maybe hack the system, if you will, is if you make more money but live at the same lifestyle, that can accelerate your plan to retirement, which is another thing people probably don't think about because they want the newer car and the newer apartment when they get to the age. So
yeah, lifestyle inflation. That's the correct term for that. Yeah.
Cool. So as far as speaking of things that help you retire sooner, debt is one of those, the opposite direction, that hinders a lot of people's ability to save even when they have large amounts of debts. And I saw there was quite a few things on your Instagram page about paying off debt. How do you recommend people should go about tackling that, or I guess a strategy for someone who's in a lot of debt?
Yeah. So real quick, I think that debt personally is the biggest economic threat to our country. And I think it's the biggest threat to anybody. And people were really worried about COVID-19 and everything that happened with that. But in reality, that's nothing compared to the effect that debt has on people. We've got trillions and trillions and trillions of debt in consumer debt, credit cards, cars, and student loans. And that's affecting people's lives. And that's really preventing people from being comfortable in retiring. So that being said, that's probably why the focus of my Instagram page that you've seen is focused around debt, is because you can't grow wealth. You can't grow and prepare for retirement if you've got debt. And that's because usually your interest rates are going to be higher than what you can earn through your investments. If you've got credit card debt, those can be upwards to 30%. And if you're only getting 7.5% in your retirement, then what's the point? So I think that's probably what the focus is. Now, to answer your question, there's really two viable forms to paying off debt. There's what's called the snowball method. And what the snowball method is you tackle your debt from smallest amount and then work it up to the biggest. So you take your smallest amount, make all your payments on all your debt, and then as you pay off your smallest loan, wrap in the amount you were paying on that one into your next highest loan. And so you kind of just work up the chain as you continue to grow your payments. That's why it's a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger.
Okay.
And then there's the avalanche method, which is one that I particularly like, which is attacking your debt with the highest interest rate first. And that idea is you take that one because you're losing more money on that one than you are on the others. And so you'd want to take the one that you're losing the most money on first, pay that off, and then you wrap it into the next interest rate. So it's, I mean, you can do a hybrid, you can do one or the other. It all depends on the individual. Some people need small wins, small successes, which is why the snowball method works for them. But I'm a financial guy, I'm a money guy. And if I can save money, I'm going to go with the avalanche method. And that's what motivates me. So it just depends on the individuals. So like when I coach people, not everybody's the same. It depends on who it is. And we come up with a plan together and we just go from there.
Okay. So the fastest method is the avalanche, because you're tackling the highest one with the highest interest rate. So you're essentially going to be spending less money over a longer period of time. With a snowball, it's more for people who want some of that like sense of reward.
Yep.
If you could with, okay.
Absolutely.
And what would you say is the worst type of debt? Student loans or credit card or mortgage? What do you say?
I think there's two. So the first one are those payday loans, those quick payday loans. I think that's the worst. The interest rate on those is atrocious. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've got these title loan companies down the street where you can get $5,000 today if you show them proof of title of a car or whatever. I think those are the worst types of debt because it's instant and the interest rate is atrocious and it never goes away. And then you deal with bad creditors. You know, if you work with a credit card company, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to call you up and they may garnish wages or whatever. But as far as these other people, they're a little bit more intimidating. So it's a little more scary.
Okay.
So those quick payday loans are probably the worst. Second, I would probably go with your credit cards. Credit cards are a huge black hole, high interest rates. And then third type of debt are going to be car leases for me. And the reason why car leases is if you run the numbers and you do the math, if you take out a car on a lease, you end up paying about 14% interest on a car lease. If instead of just buying it and taking out a loan on it and having it forever, you know, sometimes you can get those interest rates at 3 to 2%. But if you lease it, you're paying a premium and you're paying about 14%, and then you can only drive it certain amounts, and you know, it's just kind of a pain. So those yeah, I would say that those are my top three in order.
Okay, that sounds about right to me. As far as is that always?
What would you
debt?
say, Brendan? I want to know, what would you say?
I mean, I personally have student debt, so that one is demonized in my perspective. But as far as the worst, it kind of seems like what you're talking about. It's based off the interest rate, so you know a lot more than I do is in that area. So definitely staying away from those payday loans and going after those higher interest rate ones.
Yeah. Well, and kind of what, you know, I wanted to address your point with student loans here. You said demonize student loans. There are a lot of people out there who really hate student loans and they really attack it, and they really don't like the idea of having a student loan. And, you know, I'm just going to be honest with you. I worked full-time through college. I worked 40 hours a week. I was making some pretty good money, but I had to take out student loans. And I think part of that is because I wanted to accelerate my career. I wanted to move that forward. And in my industry, the sooner you start, the sooner you make money and you start to move up the chain. And it's kind of a set structure. So like you spend 2 years in this position, 3 years in this position, 3 years in this position, and you go up. So the later you start that, the later you start that growth. And so some people say start early, save, and then go to college. I'm indifferent. I sit on the fence. If you can avoid student debt, I'm all for that. You know, if you can take out scholarships, I wish I'd spent more time looking for scholarships basically. But, you know, I worked full time through school and I still had to take out student loans, and, you know, it is what it is. They're paid off now. I paid them off, you know, within 2 years of, you know, a year to 2 years of graduating. but I had to do it. And so I don't know. I'm
No,
indifferent.
I'm
And I respect your opinion. I know you might not like it, but I think that sometimes it happens.
no, I mean, I'm right there with you. The reason I don't like it is because I have them. I don't know if you know, I'm a pilot. I'm actually in college right now, and I'm working through the flight training process. So I'll be flight instructing, and flight school is just a whole thing in itself. There's a lot of student loans that you need to really complete that if you don't have the means to pay for it. So I work almost full time, and yeah, I do have those, but it's kind of similar what you're saying. The sooner you get into the airlines, um, the sooner you make more money. Uh, One of my friends put it in a different perspective for me recently. It's right. So say you get into the airlines 2 years later. Well, that's at the end of your career. 2 years could be 2 years of making like a couple $100,000 to $300,000, whatever it is a year. So really, you're losing that much money. So not having taken out the loans to go to school to do for me, my dream career would have completely changed that whole process and lost. I mean, if you want to think about it that way, like however many hundreds of thousands that I would have been making. Um, so I think it can be bad, like you were saying, if you just want to go to school to join a frat and have some fun, and you come out on the other side with all this debt. That's maybe not the best, but like your job, where you know exactly what you want to do, and you have literally just this laid out plan of you're going to be here once you get into this job, and then 2 more years you're in this spot, and you can have that sort of a game plan. I think that is worth it. I'm still not a fan of having all these loans. I wish I would be a different way.
Let's be honest. Nobody likes to be in debt to anybody, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's just sometimes it's a necessary evil. But I literally had the worst college experience of anybody. I woke up, I went to early morning classes, went to work all day, and then I went to night classes, and then I studied all night, and then that was it. I never went to parties. I never lived on campus. I never did any of that. And so I did all I could to avoid student debt, but unfortunately it happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's the right way to do it, though. If you're really determined about getting to where you want to be, no wasting time. Just get what needs to be done, taken care of. So that's awesome. I think a lot of people can learn from that. I know I probably could have benefited from hearing that going into college, but yeah, debt not always bad. What's another scenario where you can use debt to your advantage, or what type of debt would you even recommend having,
Well,
or is there like maybe a mortgage, or is there any
no,
specific?
it's a loaded question, right? There's a lot of people out there who have beliefs that you can leverage debt to grow wealth. Um, I I sit on the fence there. I think it depends on the individual. So I think it's okay going into debt for a mortgage. I have a mortgage on my house, and I think that that's just necessary most of the time. Who's got 150 to $300,000 laying around to buy a house? Yeah, it depends on where you are too. I wish my houses in my area cost that, but they don't. And so, in order to buy a house, you got to take out a mortgage a lot of the time.
Mm,
And so, I think that it's okay to have a mortgage. That being said, there are debts that you can do that people use to leverage it. I would avoid any kind of debt that's not for what they call your four walls.
mm,
So, um, I don't know. I would be really careful in using debt to grow wealth in other areas. You've got people who say, oh, like your home equity loans, why would you put a second mortgage on your house to pay for renovations or pay for a vacation or something? So I would avoid those types of loans, and I would avoid uh, private debt or lending or borrowing from other people. I don't know. I just debt is not fun, and I don't like it. And so if you can avoid it at all costs, I would just avoid it.
for sure. What if I give you this scenario and tell me if it makes sense? If you have $250,000 cash and you can either buy the house outright and not have any debt on your mortgage, wouldn't it make more sense if you did have that cash to put a high down payment to have a mortgage that has a lower interest than the money that you could now invest and gain from that. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, no, I get you. Um, when it comes down to it, that's probably what I would end up doing,
Mm.
um, because I'm a numbers guy, I'm a money guy, and I see how my retirement accounts have gone, even through COVID, how my growth has happened, and as I keep investing, my retirement account keeps growing. And so at the end of the day, that's probably where I would land. You know, decreasing your mortgage payment quite a bit, because that's really what you want, is you don't want as much debt as possible. But if I have a 2.8% interest on my home, but I can get 15% in the stock market through my retirement account, you know, that's a hard fight. It's a hard battle to lose if you're sitting on one side or the other. So, but I mean, I'm a hybrid guy. I kind of like a little bit of both, because either side is a little too extreme, right? If you say no debt, debt is absolutely bad, get rid of it at all costs, that's a little extreme. But then you have people who's like, take out as much debt as possible, invest it because your wealth will grow. I think that's a little extreme. I kind of sit in the middle. There's good debt, there's bad debt. There's also leveraging. You know, if I can have my mortgage payment as low as possible, that'd be great. And then if I don't have a mortgage payment at that point, I can use that money that I would use for my mortgage payment to then invest it. You know, so it's just, I mean, it's one or the other. I can pay off my debt and then use that to start investing, or I can invest it all at once. So, I mean, either way, we're talking small dollar figures here at the end of the day, but you're probably better off doing a hybrid or just paying off the debt.
Yeah. I always like to hear people's perspective on that and how they go about, because I mean, Dave Ramsey, his kind of thing is just zero debt ever, right? That's where but I think
Yeah.
that's assuming that most people don't really you know, they get into credit card debt so they can buy more candy bars or whatever, you know, not to leverage it like you're talking about.
Yeah.
For you personally, what's something that we can learn from, like a mistake you've made along the way? I'm really young. I'm still getting my feet wet. I don't really have too much experience. Is there a time in your life where you would look back and you're like, man, I wish I did that differently?
Yeah. So early in my financial coaching career, I don't know what happened, but I had this desire to buy a motorcycle. And I don't know what spawned it, to be honest with you. I just like had this burning desire to buy a motorcycle. Well, I actually know where, okay, I'll back up a little bit. I got a motorcycle from a neighbor for like $500 when I was in my early 20s. And I rebuilt it and then sold it. But I sold it so fast that I never got to enjoy it because my profit on it was so big. And so I'm like, well, okay, well, I kind of want to enjoy one. So I saw one on, you know, like online, like Craigslist, found it, saw the price on it. I'm like, hey, you know, that looks okay, price wise. Like, I think I can handle that. And so I called the bank and said, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, in order to get a motorcycle loan, you need this, 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 and this. Or we can get you a personal loan and you can have the money today. And I went, well, that's what I want. I don't want to go through the efforts to do anything else. And so I was like, give me that personal loan. And so within a couple hours, I had the money in my account to buy a motorcycle. I withdrew the money, went and purchased the motorcycle. And that literally happened probably in a matter of 2 hours.
Easy as that. Dang.
And I mean, I bought my motorcycle, right? Well, long story short is the interest rate on that personal loan was about 15%. And every moment I had that motorcycle, I just saw money pouring out of my body in interest. And so I did everything I could to make that payment. Matter of fact, the interest rate was I'm telling you, this is a big money mistake for me. It was a good learning experience. The interest rate was higher on my personal loan at the time than it was my credit card. So I actually missed a payment on my credit card because I've never carried credit card debt in my life, never once from a month, except for one time. And it was because I would rather take the money that I was going to use to pay for like my groceries for that month and pay off the motorcycle. And so I did that. So I paid off the motorcycle, and the next month I was able to recoup and pay the credit card, whatever. But that was the biggest money mistake I ever made. And so it was that moment where I went, what in tarnations were you thinking? And I sold that motorcycle not weeks after it was paid off. I was just like, this was
Oh
stupid.
no.
I'm out of here. And you want to know what I sold that for?
How
For
much?
about 60% of what I paid for it. And I'd only had it for like 6 months because it wasn't worth what I paid for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not talking huge dollar figures here. I mean, I probably all said and done maybe lost 1,200, 1,500 bucks on the whole thing. But, you know, it was the lesson. It was a valuable lesson for me. Ever since then, I pay off my credit card every week. You know, I buy my groceries, I pay whatever, my utilities, and every week I'm going in and I'm paying it off because I'm never going to have that again. And I don't carry any debt on any vehicle I have ever anymore. Like I pay cash for my cars and anything I ever want to do because it's not worth it. It's never worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that mistake might have saved you a lot more money down the road because
Oh, totally. Yeah.
you know, if you wouldn't have had that experience, maybe you do that to a car, which is a little bigger of a purchase or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got buddies around me, you know, right after that time we're buying big trucks. And I'm like, oh, I want a truck. But then this experience happened. I said, I'm never buying that truck.
Right. You're like,
I'm going to buy myself a Toyota Camry that barely runs.
yeah. Do you really want the truck, or would it be nice to have a truck? um,
Oh yeah. But my lifestyle, Brennan, you know, I'm an outdoorsy guy. I need a truck for my lifestyle.
you're preaching to the
Anyway,
choir. That's what they all say, right?
that's what they all say. And then they all end up using it commuting to work every day. And that's about it.
Jeez. Okay. All right. So with the current time being so unsure and people being in such a pinch financially because they're out of work or whatever it is, it seems like a lot of people are taking the time to reflect, whether it's, oh man, how do I get myself out of the situation? How do I let this never happen again? Um, and trying to figure out how to be more responsible in case of a pandemic comes where they lose their job or whatever. What do you recommend to someone to prepare for something like the year of 2020?
Yeah. So I think the year of 2020 has been a tough year for people. And it is a year of reflection, like kind of like you said. But I think moving forward, what it's shown where people were weak in their lives. And for, I want to say probably 90 to 95% of people, it was financially and job security. And I think that's really the kicker. And so what should 2020 look like for people? Well, my goal is, and what I'm trying to educate people on and help people understand is, if something like this happens again, am I going to be prepared for it? And I hope the answer is yes. I hope the answer is I've got an emergency savings of 3 to 6 months. So I'll back up. People talk about emergency savings. What emergency savings is it's preparing for the unexpected, preparing for, if all things go crazy, do I have enough to take care of myself? And so what that looks like is probably mortgage, utilities, food, gas to get to your job, like basic necessities. Can I survive? And so the hope is yes. So they say 3 to 6 months, that's a good gauge.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, if somebody had a 6 month emergency fund when COVID hit, when did everything kind of go down and then start to ramp up again? It was about 6 months,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So if you had a 6 months emergency savings to take care of yourself and you lost your job, hopefully you had an emergency savings and that would have held you through the pandemic, at least until the economy started to get back on its feet. I like to shoot for long-term, 6 months to a year. Now, I don't attack that super hard. Once I have my 6 months of emergency savings, I kind of slowly build that up. And so, I like to see a 12 months of emergency savings grow over the next 4 or 5 years, just because you've got it. So I would hope to see 2021 is the year for people to build an emergency savings, prepare for the unexpected. Now, that doesn't include things that what I call the unexpected expected expenses. You know, everybody knows their tires are going to go bad. Everybody knows they're going to get a flat tire. Everybody knows that they're going to need to change their oil on their car. Something's going to go bad. Everybody knows that your furnace in your house is going to go out. That's not emergency savings. Those are expenses that you should already be saving for and preparing for. Emergency savings is if you lost your job, could you pay your mortgage, your utilities, your food, and your transportation? That's what an emergency savings is. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd like to see the goal is for 2021. So I hope that answered your question. I kind of went off on a little bit, but I
That's beautiful. I love that. So you would say attack those first 6 months, and then you can kind of build up those next 6 months over a course of 4 or 5 years, right? Is that kind of what there's a brief recap?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would shoot for is 3 to 6 to start, and then you kind of slowly build that up over the next several years.
Okay, I have a couple more questions about emergency funds.
Yeah.
So there's those two different categories. You talked about the real emergency fund and then the expected. Where do you keep both of those emergency funds? Is one of them in a savings account and one of them is in a checking account? How do you balance that?
It depends. It depends on the individual. Everybody's so different. Me being a numbers guy, so I run my personal finances like a business. I've got one checking account and one savings account, and everything runs through that. And it's because I keep track of my expenses so well in an Excel spreadsheet that I know my categories and I know how much is in each of my categories. So I know how much I have saved for tires that I'm gonna probably buy next spring. And so, but that's in my checking account. But so is my food that I'm spending this month, but so is my utilities. It's all there. I just categorize it. But some people can't work that way. They can't use Excel. It's not their thing. They just need to set up automatic deposits into different accounts and just set it and forget it. And so lots of people that I know have multiple checking and multiple savings accounts and categorize them that way. And automatically every month their paycheck goes and allocates to those different accounts. So it just depends on the individual. They know themselves the best, the individuals do. So like when I coach with people, I work it out with them. And usually they'll start doing the Excel and then they'll end up probably opening up a couple of accounts, but then they realize that it's easier just to track in a spreadsheet. So it just depends, you know?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I've always wondered how other people do it. In my mind, what the first option makes the most sense to me, but whether it's like in different accounts and where to keep it, I've always kind of never had a really sure answer. So that's really good. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
What's the most important human characteristic to become financially successful? If you could point out one thing that all these people have in common, like yourself, even what's that characteristic?
It's a tough question. It sounds cliche to say this, but I would say positivity. And I think the reason for that is your mind is the most powerful tool that you have. There's a book that I really like. It's called The Happiness Advantage. And basically it's this book of study and research that this guy did from Harvard. And he studied people that had happy tendencies versus not happy tendencies, or like positive tendencies. And he looked at their growth potential and their income potential and all these other aspects of their lives. And when it all was said and done, the people that were happy naturally and had a positive outlook on life were much greater in their opportunity to grow wealth and to get better jobs, to get the promotions, to get the pay raises, and to be more successful. And it was because they were happy and they were positive. And believe it or not, I mean, Brendan, you know your friends. I mean, you know people you're around. Somebody's got that one friend that's just a drag, right? And like there's such a drag. They're boring to talk to, or they're always complaining, and you're just like, dude, shut up. And like, and it's like that in real life. People don't want to be surrounded by others that are negative or not happy or say, negative things or talk bad about people. No, nobody wants to really be around that. And so I think that one trait really, really changes people, which is kind of what led to my Instagram or my business being called Positive Budgets.
Yeah.
So it's got the double meaning. So obviously you want your budgets to go positive. You want your money to go up. So it's got the meaning of seeing your wealth grow, but then also through positivity. I like to teach people and encourage people through positive teaching, because that really motivates people more than scarcity. I don't want to scare people. I don't want to be negative in any way. So anyway, long story short is I think positivity is really the most important attribute somebody can have.
That's great, man. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It seems like a great brand to kind of grow off of and to build your financial plan off of, is that positivity. And I think there's a lot of really good insight that you just gave right there about that. Well, to kind of angle things towards a close here, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know I just messaged you on Instagram and you got your whole life to worry about, and you're taking time to support my podcast here, but it's called the Get Wealth podcast. So I always try to ask what your definition of wealth is. How do you define wealth?
I would define wealth as being able to take care of yourself. Well, but that being said, is being able to take care of yourself financially, but also not having lost family, business, or other personal relationships along the way. That really, to me, is wealth. Wealth isn't a dollar figure. It's not how much money you have. It's what do you have? Do I have friends that love and support me? Do I have family that stuck with me? And do I have enough to live within my means to live the rest of my life? That to me is wealth. I'm not looking to be a multimillionaire. I'm looking to just be comfortable and to have loved ones around me.
Yeah, well said. I think a lot of people should take that and apply it to their own lives. And listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to share this knowledge. I feel like it's just saturated with all this financial advice.
It's like a fire hose, right? Just kind of blah.
Yeah, man, I'm probably going to go back and watch this episode like 10 times, take notes on it and everything. So I really do appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks for coming on the Get Wealth podcast.
No, Brandon, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun to express how I feel about finances and money. And so I appreciate you giving me this opportunity and this platform to hopefully teach and educate.
And then, yeah, no problem. And then one more thing, I want people who are watching this to be able to find you and on social media, whether it's your coaching, whatever it is. Can you kind of plug everything about Joshua right now, like is where people can go to?
Yeah, so they can find me at Positive Budgets on Instagram, Positive Budgets on Facebook, and then my email is positivebudgets@gmail.com. Or you can go to my website at positivebudgets.com. So it's really easy. It's just Positive Budgets on every platform. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'd love to keep in touch with you, and just to end it there.
Great. Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it.